And let me just give a quick introduction, as far as who you are. I know you, but those who are, listening, Aaron and I connected actually through LinkedIn, through, similar folks that we know, colleagues we know, and I just love his work, the mission he's on to do what he does, and it's absolutely fantastic. And so, we've connected on numerous occasions, and I asked him to do this, webinar today, because I'm a business performance advisor with Insperity, and so we provide human resource, HR support, technology services to businesses so that our communities can prosper. And when I say communities prosper, I don't just mean like now. Our mission at Insperity is to make sure that these businesses succeed for years to come, for decades to come, and the folks that are going to create those communities, those successful businesses, are our kids, the younger generation. And so it's important that we arm them with the necessary tools, financial literacy being one of them, so that they create these companies that then create these successful communities. And it starts by having the tools that aren't sometimes the easiest to come by, or even if we have them, how to convey it to kids, and that's something I'm certainly not an expert at, but again, Aaron, you are. And so just really quickly, Aaron is the CEO and co-founder of Ortus Academy, where he, along with his team, provides young adults the education, resources, and community to have the best opportunity to navigate their finances as they grow. Something I wish I had, as a kid growing, which I didn't, but that's okay. You're here now, Aaron, and we're going to provide those tools and resources to the folks now. We're going to cover today raising financially responsible children. That's the topic of today. And just as a way to entice everyone to stay till the end, Aaron will provide two things at the end. One is a parent's guide on how to have money conversations with the kids. And secondly, a money personality test for parents and kids. So stay till the end so you can find out how to get those resources. But I don't want to take up any more of your time, Aaron. Again, thank you for being here, and I'm going to give you the floor.
Well, dude, I'm glad to be here. This is a subject matter that's close to my heart. Our business is evolving into employee wellness, employee financial wellness, and some workshops and cool trainings. And yet, despite that, this is an area where the conversation is near and dear to what I believe in, and where we can make some change in the future. I also would have loved to have this as a kid. And what we're going to go through today really quickly is just a couple lessons that I've learned in probably speaking with, with is key, with, 2,500 kids. And when you talk to that many kids that often, you pick up on the small nuances that they're telling you without telling you, that they really seek and crave when it comes to understanding money, and what is available for us as leaders to them. Whether you're a parent or not a parent, we're leaders to them, and what we can do to make the relationship they develop with money healthier. And in a lot of ways, that means we got to do some work on ourselves. My relationship with money hasn't always been healthy. So it takes some evolution on our side, but what we can do today is just talk through some things that I've learned, and I'll give you some things to distill down to your kids or to your family or to your peers, whatever it is that you're around, because money is traditionally taboo, and the conversation alone needs to be treated a little differently.
And I want to reemphasize what I said earlier before you jumped on. Even if you don't have kids, this is such an important lesson, just as far as how to speak with kids, period, even if they're not your own kids. And I was just saying before you jumped on that I have nieces and nephews, and I could have used these tools as far as how to talk to them years back. They're in their 20s now, but I used to try to get across to them, lessons that I learned the hard way, but I wasn't successful in doing so. And so even if I can't go back and help them, if I have this knowledge that you're going to provide me with, anyone listening, just to help that next generation, provide them that conversation to, hey, what do I do? What's money about? How do I use it? How do I leverage it, going forward to be successful? So thanks for that, Aaron. I can't wait to hear what you have to say, because I'm taking notes as we go here as well.
Well, cool. Let me start with a little bit of a story. We were working in a school nearby. We're here in Baltimore, for those of you that don't know. And we were running a program, and one of the first questions that we asked is, fill in the blank, money is. And this was like really early in our business. We're about to eclipse the 6-year mark in like 2 weeks, which is crazy. So this was really early. And we ask this question and we get traditional answers. It's green and, it's paper and, I mean, they're kids. I think they were like 12. And we get around the room and we start working from left to right. What do you think? What do you think? What do you think? What do you think? And as we're working from left to right, I started getting this like gut instinct check that we were going to uncover something really interesting. And it just felt, I could just feel it in the air. And we get to this one young man and he says, opportunity. And I was like, that is very profound for a 12-year-old. That's super huge. Like, dude, yes. Yeah, man. Then we get to another one. And I think, what was the word she used? This young girl said, oh, it's excitement. And I was like, okay, all right. Like, that's also very interesting, right? Excitement. That means you've thought about this. And then the feeling kicked in even harder. And the last hand I called on, was this young lady named Elizabeth. I was like, what you got? And she was like, I mean, her hand was so far up in the air and she was like bouncing out of her chair. And I'm like, oh my God, I have no idea what this girl's going to say. And she stood up and she said, money is power. And I was like, whoa. And it hit me like a bomb in the chest that this girl had this relationship with money at 12, right? Fast forward a few years later, and we started working with all kinds of populations. I mean, we were in the inner city, we were in private schools, we were in public schools, we were in nonprofits, we were just all over the place, all over the country. And we went to one group that was in the inner city, and one of the young women there said, money is evil. And it was really interesting to think about these two very contrasting ideas, that money and our relationship that we form with it is birthed out of so many things, traditionally our environment and our upbringing. Now, whether you as a parent or not a parent, as an uncle, a mentor, shepherd, or leader, have intentionally had the conversation about money or not, there are so many different imprintable moments that happen because money is so intertwined into our lifestyle. And just to think about power on one side and evil on the other, what we did with both students is we talked through, if you led your entire life under this belief, where would it take you? So if money is power, probably take a high-paying career, probably, let go of something like family first, or the need for you to be fulfilled in your career because you're observing money as the most important thing, right? If it's power, that may be how you feel. Whereas if you're evil, you may actually reject a high-paying job or a steady job because having money feels wrong and it feels dirty. And those are just two examples of a relationship with money that perpetuate into adulthood. And, just thinking through that for a moment, as you know your own relationship with money, you can then be a better leader and example for someone younger than you. So I think it's really important just to highlight that story, because it gives us a good jumping point to understand why this happens, right? Why a kid says what they say about money or why they feel a certain way. And that's a really strong number one of today. You got to know your own relationship with money, because it's really hard to instill proper values in someone younger than you if you don't know your own. So a little bit of self-awareness is important. So point number one today, know your own money personality. And we've got a test here at the end of today that you can take and that your kids, your nieces, nephews, whomever is in your life can take. And one thing that we've learned from working from adults, take it with your partner. You'd find out a lot about each other and have a really powerful conversation if you both take it. So again, point number one, know your own relationship with money.
And if I may jump in there, that's so powerful, just because I can relate to that, Aaron, and perhaps others listening too, because for the longest time, I grew up thinking that money was, the folks in the neighborhood who had money. This is from my dad. Oh, how dare they think they're better than us, or bigger than us, or whatnot. And so that was my thought of money, growing up as a kid, because that was my dad's own mindset around money. So it's very how powerful of a piece to identify. Hey, before having a conversation with your child or whoever it may be, really check yourself. What's your thought? What's your beliefs around it? So wow, that's massive. Thanks for that.
I'm happy to share it, man.
Yeah.
It's something that I've had to learn too.
Mm, yeah.
Where and it evolves over time. So where your relationship is now may not be where it was when you were younger or what have you, right? At some
Right.
point, I also felt that way. I never had the shoes, the cool jerseys in high school, and so it put a certain kind of restricting belief on me with money and displaying it. And now I had to evolve and get coached and get help out of there. So
Sure.
it's a very real part of this. The next thing that I want to share, just to make this all very concrete, is to talk a little bit about how we learn. When I talk to anybody about this, I think we can all agree that we want our students, our young adult, our future leaders to be responsible, right? That's a word that gets thrown around pretty simply and pretty easily. So let's think for a moment about what responsibility is so that we understand where we want to go. When I think of responsibility, it's a little bit of ownership in my actions. It's understanding consequence. It's being able to justify decisions. It's a little bit of mistakes and then correction, right? All those things are really important when it comes to responsibility. But what I find fascinating is that, especially when it comes to money and our relationship with it, generally, what we see as far as behavior goes, maybe not what we want, but as far as behavior goes, is that the average parent wants to protect their kid from the failures, from the mistakes, and from learning the things that develop true responsibility, right? So if we think about recovery or justification, then we have to allow someone to justify or rectify on their own. And if you've ever been in a lecture, hopefully this does not feel like one, but if you've ever been in a lecture, no one likes to be lectured or lectured to or taught from this top-down perspective, right? We like to feel like we're a part of the conversation and we're equal. And there are lots of ways to engage on the topic of money, to engage your young adults, but most of them will start with a question. So tip number 2 is open with questions, not accusations and not advice. That's just you can apply that to anything, a job, a peer, a boss. I mean, it goes up and down the ladder. The reason is this: when we ask someone, let me add another caveat, adding open to the front of the word question. So we want to ask open-ended questions, really. When we observe someone making a mistake and we go in and then we take away their right to make the same mistake again, they don't get the chance to reflect and learn. That's how learning is made. The biggest challenge I have with the education system is that failure is often the punishment, when failure in entrepreneurship and in the rest of life is the starting point really for success or anything else. So we've got to allow someone to reflect on what they experienced. And if you're providing a financial opportunity to someone, whether it be hey, go make a choice on what you eat tonight, or hey, here's $10, spend it as you will. What's most critical there is not what they do, it's how you talk about it to them and how you allow them to express what they did and why. So for example, I'll give you some concrete questions that you can ask.
Yeah, please.
So let's say that you give your kid $50 and that's their allowance or whatever for the month, and they go out and buy a video game. Now, I think most of us might immediately fall into the impulse of well, that's not a good purchase, man. I wanted you to, save some or, et cetera. So we would immediately go into, you should do this next time, right? Lecture mode. Very quickly, we're in lecture mode. So now as a young adult, I'm defensive, and my punishment is when I make choices, I get punished, right? Or I'm learning that when I buy video games, my parents don't approve. Or worse than that, and probably When I tell my parents that I make choices, they don't approve of them. I'll just stop telling them. And this is what I did, right? I'm not up for like this combat zone. So I just won't tell you. And then you won't know. And now we've broken communication. Whereas if someone came in and said like, hey, I saw that you bought this video game. Like, tell me about it. What is it that you like about it? Now there's an open dialogue. And from here, we can ask a question. And this is a solid one to write down if you've got kids. How was this a smart choice? Now, as a young adult, I've got to think for myself and tell you why it was a smart choice. And truthfully, I mean this from the bottom of my heart, their answer doesn't matter as much as the way that you respond to it. So if they say this was a smart choice because all of my friends are playing this game, that's right in their eyes. That is completely truthful from their perspective in the way that you've asked the question. If they say, I don't know, all my friends bought it and I wanted to be a part of the cool crowd, that's truth for them too. And it's our job then to open up the dialogue and explore a little bit, right? And almost guide them through what it means to be responsible. So maybe the question is, okay, if you've come up with this justification, maybe the next question is, what do you think would happen if you needed to get something and now don't have any money? What do you think would happen? Now I've got to craft and think through my choice behind me and the choices ahead of me. So now I'm straddling. First, you asked me a question related to the past, the choice I've made. Now I'm asking a question that forces you to think about the past in contrast to the future, right? And so just by asking two questions, we're allowing someone young to see what responsibility looks like. Because responsibility, if we really break it down, is understanding both directions, the choice that I made and the consequence it has in the future. And we can continue to just blast them with, you should have, you could have, you didn't, you do. But now we're getting them to craft their own ideas. And by sharing in this communication, we're now able to evolve a little bit differently, not only as communication partners, but as someone in relationship with money. And, a third question you can ask just to go, so now we've gone past to past future, just to future. So now you could go, well, you have allowance coming the next month. What would you do differently next month? Mm-hmm. So now we're completely open-endedly inviting them to think about their future in relationship with money. And you can get from this a lot of different responses. I'd buy the same thing. Okay, well, why would you buy the same thing? Why would you do this over again? Why was this good enough to do over again? You wouldn't do anything different? You'd buy the same game again? Well, no, I wouldn't buy the same game again. Well, why not? Well, I already have it. And I like it, but there's no use in playing it. I don't need two versions of the same game. Interesting. So again, let's wipe away the adult, like you need to make better financial choices. Let's just focus on what this means. Now what's happened is he or she has assessed value. Having one of these has value. Having two of them has no value. That's really important. I mean, you could say this about cars, right? People are like, I want 9 cars. Do you need 9 cars? He or she has stumbled on this lesson very early. Having 2 of the same game provides no value. And you can then, when that conversation comes up, say like, wow, it's really interesting. I guess 2 games doesn't really add anything to your life, does it? And then, man, already you're on a completely different plateau of communication. And you're talking about something that's very relevant by asking these open-ended questions and laying down your need to like look down on these choices. It's very, very easy to do and can be very, very tricky to navigate.
It's often said that questions are the answers, and I could not agree with that more. And you just laid that out. Questions essentially become the answers if you ask. I guess I would back that up with the right questions, and the ones you provided us with here are fantastic questions. I'm actually writing them down, so like as a follow up, if anyone on here has any questions, reach out to me afterwards, and I can provide those questions, but those questions are probably within what Aaron will provide us with anyways. But in case you're like, man, what were those questions? If you have the questions on what the questions are, reach out to me and I'll give them to you. But those are fantastic, Aaron. Thank you for that.
Yeah, dude, those are a lot of fun to bring. And look, even for adults, that's important. Like these are adult themed questions just brought to the level of a young adult. Like I don't think we give our young aspiring futures enough credit. Like when you sit down with kids and you've got to break through the veil of like, is it safe, right? And having worked with kids for a long time, I know how to do that. I do that almost without thinking. It's just it's a natural, like energetic thing. But when they know that you have their best interest in mind, and they trust that. I mean, I coached youth soccer for 10 years and this business has been 6 years. So, I mean, I've worked with thousands of kids, and when they know that you're there for the right reasons, they'll tell you, right? And I'll have conversations with kids all the time that are 10, 11 years old, and they are very awake to what's happening in the world. And they're very awake that when they go to school, they just learn things that adults want them to know. Mm-hmm. But if you start talking about like YouTube and Twitch and people getting paid to be gamers and, you know, YouTube unboxing channels and influencers, they're pretty awake and they know more about current events and they know more about business and impact and social issues and the challenges of like double imagery that we're facing. They're very, very wise. But when we come in with this top-down mentality, we strip that power from them. So the lesson there is just to go in with less weaponry, because when we were 10, we probably didn't know either.
Right. Although we thought we did. I mean, I knew everything at 10. I knew there was nothing you couldn't tell me at 10. I knew it all. But I do like that, Aaron. You know, I actually wrote it down. You know, don't come in with with accusation or hey, let me give you advice because I know it all. Just come in with a question. And I think and I just want to reiterate the fact that just kind of like saying what you're saying is, hey, it's not just about having a conversation, but it's the kind of conversation you have. So the act itself, fantastic, but it's how you have the conversation, which pretty much speaks to what you just said. So fantastic advice.
Well, I'll explain why that is really quickly. If you at 10 know it all and I at 33 know it all, now we're battling, right?
Sure, of course.
And now this is competitive. So if I'm running a workshop with someone and it doesn't matter how old they are, if they're like, hey, can you tell me how to do this? If they haven't asked that question, but I'm telling them how to do something, they're not listening. If they've asked the question, they're listening, right? Mm-hmm. Someone has invited me to that table. Mm-hmm. But a lot of times, if you're running a workshop or you're in a business with team members that are collaborating, this happens all the time. You versus me. And these questions are designed to recalibrate two people as side by side. So they're no longer pointing at each other. They are side by side, observing the behavior, observing the action. And, this could be at the grocery store. This could be, at Target. It can happen at any moment where, hey, Mom, we should get these celery sticks. I don't know. Well, no, we shouldn't. Boom. Right? We are immediately in combat. Why should we get those? Reframes the whole entire conversation, right? Or have you thought about what it means to get those over the other ones, right? Again, this open-ended question is a simple tactic that can open up a lot of doors.
I think we often, I'm guilty of this. I think, I've been guilty of this in the past with my niece and nephews, where you think of them as so young that, like I can't have this kind of conversation where I'm asking them to really think about it. And, bad on me, my fault for thinking that way, where you're saying like, no, it starts there. Start by having that conversation and just, well, why do you think we should get those? It's such power. I wish I had this years ago, but it's great to be learning it now. Such
power. And look, I would argue that we have the responsibility to ask these kinds of questions, right? That's how they'll evolve into critical thinkers and dreamers. I had a kid ask me, she came up and she was like, hey, Coach Aaron, what's your third favorite reptile? And I was like, I was puzzled. I couldn't move. I had no idea how to answer this question, right?
Okay.
It forced me to think about my first reptile, my second favorite reptile, and then get to my third. And, you know, her asking that question forced me to grow. I had never outlined and alphabetized my favorite reptiles, right? And similarly, our job is to present questions to our young futures and say, come this way, right? Invite them to grow. And you would be floored at how well they do this. They are creative. They are genius at being without restriction until we place restriction on them. So by asking an open-ended question, we give them the whole galaxy to explore. Just to answer your question, they might be like, well, because these celery sticks are made of stardust and part alligator fin. And you're like, wow, that's amazing. We have to buy those. That sounds amazing. But again, we're exploring this with them, not against them. And that's the big lesson here.
Powerful, powerful.
All right, lesson number 3. A lot more questions and a lot more exercises are in the parents guide. So when we send that and share that with you, that's got like clickable links, games. I mean, just a ton of stuff that you can do with your kids at really any age. You can adapt it. Lesson number 3, I really struggle sometimes when I have these talks. I don't know if you know this, but like what's in front of me is just nothing, right? I'm just speaking based on experience. I don't script these things, but I've been wrestling in my head as I've been talking about what number 3 would be. And there's a couple different places to go, but the one that's speaking to me most right now is to talk through why money is important to talk about in the first place, and why the conversation with money is something you should have, even if it is like gritty and full of friction. So number 3, have the conversation at all points, at all possibilities, at any junction. As a parent, take the opportunity when money talks come up and run right at them. Here's what I mean by that. If you really look across the board, having the conversation of money is like, for many, going to the dentist. Unfortunately, I had braces for like 7 years. That's a long time to have braces. And because of that, man, when I go to the dentist, dude, I instantly break out in a sweat. It's the most uncomfortable place for me. The smell, like all of it, just why is it only white? Why is it the only color you can have at a dentist? I don't get it. But there is such trauma in not having a good dental experience that my future in going to the dentist has changed. And I had to work really hard to overcome that. But money isn't like the dentist. You don't go to money every 6 months. You go to money every minute. You make choices every minute. And if you're unable to talk about it, you have a very rough and bumpy ride ahead of you. And having the conversation with money will not only advance you as a parent and allow you to shepherd your kids through their experience, but will give you opportunities to talk with them when there are problems, and when there are successes, you can celebrate them. In many families, money is very taboo, and we don't always know how to, and the parents guide will help you, but we don't often know how to. And those open-ended questions are great for when you're being intentional. But even when you're not being intentional, it's really important that you invite the conversation. So maybe you set up time to talk about money once a month, right? To go over your budget and invite your kids to be a part of that, to talk about your failures, to talk about your wins. And if every single lesson that they learn is you trying to impart a lesson, AKA ask open-ended questions and like really intentionally be present, you'll miss the truth of money. Money is a currency underneath everything we do. It's energy. And to go back to point number 1 and that story, like our relationship with money, the word we use to describe money is energy. Money is energy. That's where we take all of our lessons, adults, kids, superstars, hotshots, NBA stars, it doesn't matter. The objective then is to use energy appropriately. but we make mistakes too. And inviting them to be a part of our process allows them to learn really early. So let's say you're budgeting. Well, the best way to like get them to budget is to invite them to your budgeting. Even if your budget is negative, right? You've got to be brave enough to have the conversation though. If you want, let's say you want your young adult, you're like, man, you know, I really messed up my car buying process. Well, share that story. What did you mess up on? You have to be a little bit vulnerable in that conversation to share that, or they won't learn. It's not a lecture, it's a story. And the conversation that is really important to have is the one that you've probably been avoiding. So again, this isn't like you need to learn this lesson. They'll get their lesson. They'll learn the lesson. Just like you would tell your best friend. Right? You don't go to your best friend and say, listen, I bought a car yesterday and I don't think I did a great job. I'd like you to sit down and listen so that you don't have this happen. You would never say that to your friend. You'd be like, oh my God, Tommy, dude, I think I made a bad mistake. And here's why I think that. Like, and Tommy's like, dude, what happened, man? Like, everything okay? Like, yeah, I think, look, it'll work out. But like, man, I know that I could have negotiated better for this car. Like I didn't really know much about interest rates. I did some Googling after the fact. I didn't really prepare. I didn't know my price. I didn't know my sticker price. I didn't know what I could get. And I think I paid like $2,000 more than whatever. And if we had conversations with our kids about money like that, they would learn in vitro. We don't need to coach them through it. They're a part of our mishaps and our mistakes and our learning. And therefore, the conversation becomes their lesson, not our lesson. And that's powerful. It's not our lesson to give them, it's their lesson to extract.
Wow, I'm thinking of that in so many different ways. Just sharing with them through story and versus lecture, and the way you just put that really, for me, it hit home. Where, like you said, I wouldn't sit down with a buddy and say, let me sit you down and tell you, why you shouldn't do X, Y, and Z. No, I would share with them my story, and through that story, he or she would get whatever lesson they took from it, but through my story, not through my lecture. And that is so powerful. And I never really thought of that, of actually sharing a story with a child versus sometimes you're trying to educate them, like you said. And even if it's good intention through lecture, it's still through lecture, where it could be so much more powerful through story. It's kind of mind blowing for me right there. You just, that whole idea. I appreciate that.
Well, let me walk you through one of those just so you have an example, because I think it's important to see like how it could work. So was running a class. I think they were like 14. And I was explaining that I was in Vegas, and Vegas gave me $1,000 of free play money. So here I am, I'm free playing large. I'm like, dang, this is great. And that $1,000 quickly became $1,800. And as I explained this to them, I mean, to them, that was like $1 million, right? They're like, yeah, like they don't know that that's like rent, but they're like, yeah, dude, this is great. And I'm explaining like, I'm going from 1,000 to like 1,200 to like 1,250 to like 14,500. Like I'm walking them through it. And they're like, yeah. Okay. 14,500 down to 1,200, up to 1,625. And they're just following along. And then I'm like, at this point, I'm up $700 or $800. I've got $1,800. I'm up $800. What do you think I should do? And they're like, good question. They're like, leave, take it out, leave. Some of the kids are like, take 800 and bet the rest, or like take out 200 and play more, like roll again. And I'm like, well, let me tell you what happened. Play again. 1,600, play again. 1,300, play again. 1,250, play again. 1,225, play again. 1,350, feeling good. All right, it's coming back up. Play again. 950, play again. 750, play again. And I get all the way down to like 200, and they're like on their chairs. They're like, no, don't do it. And we get all the way down, and I finish the story with bust, right? The classic Vegas tale. I'm up and I'm out. And so I stopped and paused at the end of this after all this ruckus. I mean, there's so much energy in the room. And I'm like, what could I have done differently? So another open-ended question. And all of a sudden, all these brilliant ideas come out. Well, you take some and leave, take your winnings and use the rest, play with the rest, or take it all out and stop, or, you probably should never have played to begin with. But by telling them the story, they were able to extract their own lesson. Some of them were like, don't go to Vegas in the first place. But we then could talk about, well, here's the reason why. And then we could talk about, well, this is what I was thinking. Do you think that was a great choice? And I kind of made the story the lesson, and then we could talk about what they saw as opportunity. And I mean, there was so much energy there that, like, it was so simple to make a shift, and it was so easy to, like, see them learning through my story rather than me trying to say, like, listen, I've been to Vegas. So here's how this might traditionally go. Listen, I've been to Vegas. Here's what happened. And you know what I learned from that? Don't go to Vegas. Don't play. Don't bet. Take your money out early, right? And at that point, all they're hearing is don't do X, don't do X, don't do. And they're not hearing the actual words, but through the story, they're actually able to, like, extract the wonder of why I was there and feel the emotions, and then determine how to process those emotions. And for young adults, the conversation that we have with them is so meaningful. I can still remember the stories that my dad told me when I was young. I cannot remember the lectures. Wow. I tuned that out.
Wow.
But I do remember the stories, because the stories never had an objective. I learned from the stories. I didn't learn from the lectures. Lectures, man, I was in my own little world. But the stories I'll remember forever.
And it sounds to me, you know what I like about that? That's your story right there, is the fact that story makes you think. Like, if you just give an answer like, hey, here's a lesson, don't do that, don't go to Vegas, don't spend this, don't do that. It's just the answer. Where a story makes you think. It's open dialogue, whether it's with the, then you come up with, well, why should I not go to Vegas? Why should I have pulled out the 800 when I was up? You have context behind the answer. And it brings me back to, like, math back in elementary school, where I had the right answer, but I only got partial credit because they wanted to see how I arrived at the answer. And I'm like, but I got the answer right. They're like, you're missing the point. We want to make sure you know how you arrived at that answer. And so I can't help but think about that. And there's such power there, that don't just know what to do, but how did you arrive there? And that is so major, especially if you can start with a child, whatever, if they're 7, 8, 10, 15, 16, not just knowing, hey, here's the answer, but how you arrived. That is fantastic, Aaron. Thank you for that.
The thing I'll leave everybody with, what we do very well is we provide context to everything that we do. Adults, kids, etc., entrepreneurs, anybody that we're working with. If someone comes in and says, you need a budget, my natural reaction is like combat. No, I don't. Who are you? Right? I don't even know you, dude. You can't come in here and tell me I need a budget. But if through story or through another mechanism, you can show me why a budget's important or why it matters, I'll probably ask the question of, like, hey, where do I start? Right? And whether it be you listening or this for your kids, context is really important. So the story allows someone to understand the why. After that story, I can tell them about how, free is dangerous, or I can tell them about how the lure of more is usually the downfall of, like, greed is the downfall of growth, right? Like, all these different pieces we can then talk about, but I've got to provide context as to why I'm even talking about it. And, for you listening or interested in working with someone around you about money, context is going to be really important. And the Parents Guide is a great resource. The Money Personality, they're both about context. The Money Personality is 100% context. You take the Money Personality test so that you have context to your choices, to your natural inclinations, to your behaviors, and you can observe them differently. And same with budget. A lot of people don't budget. That's because budget feels like no. If we make budget feel like yes, budgets are exciting, right? How can we make budgets cool? Budgets are This is tell me what you value. Tell me what you love. Cool. We're going to make that the inside of the circle. Cool. How much money do you make? Let's keep all of your money where your values are, inside the circle. The budget is inside the circle. All the budget really is a practice of isolating what's in the circle and what's out of the circle. So if it's not in your values, it belongs out of the circle. If it is in your values, let's put it in the circle. And that's how you make budgeting cool.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all context, not content, context. And that's just something we've learned over the years.
Cool by association, right? I think Steve Harvey, the guy's funny guy, but he's also a very smart guy as far as, some of his philosophies. And he always says, hey, you want kids to do, reminds me of what you just said, Aaron, you want kids to do math and science? Don't talk to them about math and science. Talk to them about their dreams, their goals, their aspirations, and how that ties to math and science. And they will do math and science. It's kind of like you said, don't talk to them about budgeting. Talk to them about, well, what do you want? What's that cool thing? And if budget helps them get that cool thing, then they will, like and welcome budgeting. So I love that. That's fantastic.
Yeah. Make a budget, make a budget for your Xbox. Because kids right now are going haywire for Xbox and PS5 or whatever, PS 1 million, right? But,
and yeah, I lost track. Yeah.
I know. But like when you buy that, you can't just buy the machine. You need the games and you need the controllers and you need the adapters and like all this stuff. So, hey, let's make a plan for your PS5. Is the system enough? No, we need controllers. Oh, okay. Well, how much is a controller? Oh, okay. So, well, what else do we need? Well, I want like a game, just one game. Well, I want like 10 games. Like, okay, well, let's make this plan. Now you're making a budget. Okay, now we know how much we want to spend. How are we going to get there? Now you got a plan. AKA, right? This is a business plan. This is a P&L. This is entrepreneurship. This is a personal home finance plan. This is a financial, like all of these things relate. But I think we often want to just dump our mistakes and our lessons on somebody as though they're just going to like receive them like the Holy Grail and like, birth them over their head and be like, thank you. When we all want to explore and experience the world from our own two eyes. And we just want people around us to guide us, lead us, and nurture us through that process. And that's just one, I guess we went through 3 today. Those are 3 ways that you can do that and show up for your kids differently when it comes to money. I
want to be respectful of everyone's time. It's 12:45. Aaron, I could chat with you for hours, which we've done before, because it's the knowledge and the passion you speak with, and just your mission to do what you're doing. It's so inspiring. And the fact that you took time out of your day to share, those 3 with us. And I can't thank you enough. How can we're going to end here shortly so folks can get back to work, but how can we get those resources that you mentioned?
So let's drop 2 links in. Mike, I sent them to you because it won't let me chat everyone. There's 2 links. One is for the parents guide and one is for the money personality test. So you can go through and get both of them. I recommend starting with the personality test. It's a good place to start for you to know your own personality, your own relationship with money, and then you can then shepherd somebody else through it to have some conversations. You can also build a conversation with like, well, what are you? What are the pros? What are the cons? Right? What do you think your strength is that way? So start there. And then the parents guide is right behind that with all kinds of exercises and there's so much stuff in there. So that's where you go. I'll put here, I'll send this to you, Mike. So you can.
Perfect. And actually, I just opened it up, Aaron. I just opened up the chat. So I just put it. Yeah.
Oh, cool. There we go. So I'll put my email in here. If anybody wants to email me directly, I'll do a quick self promo. We do a lot of stuff with the youth, but our primary vehicle for impact right now is an employee wellness program. So we do employee financial wellness and team building workshops, and we have some online education for teams, for employees. And we usually work with businesses that have core values, small to mid-size, that really want to demonstrate to their employees that they're on track for more than just them coming to work, but for their financial future, their own well-being, their own development in a sector that's really important, and that is our money.